Hello and welcome to the show. Now when it comes to the Hill Climb build series, I have had various rules with building the cars, not just that they couldn't exceed A-Class, but we also had to run the cars with their standard engines, with their standard drivelines, along with, well, pretty much everything running on race tyres if it could. Race tyres simply because of the huge advantages as a full handling kind of series, so naturally everything wanted to have race tyres on it, and the engine and driveline was for a little bit of variety. Many cars you would swap the 6.2 V8 in, for example, just because it was a good engine and so on. However, I am kind of curious to see how, while fitting within A-Class, some cars might have fared. This Subaru Legacy, for example, technically doesn't fit the rules because it's got the flat 4 turbo rally engine, but it is probably my fastest overall A-Class. It's a hell of a vehicle. It's a hell of a car, this one. 450 horsepower, 650 torque going on in this. Weighs 2,600 pounds. It's a monstrous overall A-Class car. However, the Hill Climb stage is immensely specialised, and cars that can be unbelievably fast in A-Class don't necessarily work when it comes to running up the Hill Climb stage. Certainly this car is fitted with rally tyres, because that's what it was designed for. It was designed to work for just about every single condition. So how would it fare when tackling the Needle Pass? Now again, much like with the normal build episodes, the car would be given 3 attempts up the mountain. For this video, I've just got the fastest of the runs. Now immediately, the Legacy is a little bit more understeery. It's not too bad. It's certainly nowhere near as bad as some of the stock cars that we drove up last time around with their sport tyres or whatever. It's certainly not quite as understeery, but you've also got to be a little bit more careful through some of these corners. You can't throw it at the course like you could with a 340R, like you could with something on race tyres. Now, all-wheel drive helps a little bit with this, in as far as putting power down out of the corners, it's pretty damn good at, and there is plenty of speed coming up over this hill, for example. But, ultimately it's struggling. I was wondering if it might struggle a little bit more, again, just considering the tyres that it is on. Rally tyres are the second best tyres you're going to get on a car, but race tyres do make a big difference in all of this. I was a little bit late. There's a tiny bit of a lock-up. You kind of get away with it a smidge because while you end up a bit wide on the entrance, you can actually get quite a nice apex, a decent run out of that particular hairpin if you do. We're going to get a little bit fine around the hairpin, so you can get away with putting a wheel on the gravel when you have a rally car such as this one, as it's around the final corner for the Legacy, and out the other side it's going to be a quick run to the finish line, and it is a decent time for the vehicle. It's not challenging the 1:23.6 that was set by the 340R. In fact, was on 3 seconds down. However, a 26.2 is not a terrible time by any stretch of the imagination. That's an 18th place overall for a vehicle entirely, well, it's built for an overall, entirely not specialised to this course. We're 0.2 seconds down on the M1, the Renault 5. It beats the Esprit, the MX-5, the Civic RS, the Miura, Mercury Coupe. But in some ways, the Mercury Coupe only 0.2 of a second down on what is my favourite overall A-Class car. Testament to some of these sort of specialised hill climb cars. It was a good benchmark, though, for the Legacy. As I said, we know it's a very good A-Class car. Next was another one of my go-to A-Class vehicles. Not quite as fast overall as the Legacy, but still a pretty damn good shout, the Talbot Sunbeam. Now, this one, putting out some 300 horsepower, slightly less powerful, a lot less torque at 280, but it is light. Yes, the Talbot is very light indeed. It's less than 2,000 pounds, and this particular one has been converted to all-wheel drive. Once again, in fact, in the recent Lego Valley races we did, this proved to be a very competent A-Class car, and I was hoping that up the hill climb it would also work. Again, you've got that all-wheel drive traction, and it is a little bit lighter than the Legacy. The downside of these cars, not only are they not running on race tyres, they don't have particularly big ones. I think the Legacies was 235s, 245s. I think this is 225s on this. They don't have particularly big tyres, and as we know from the Quartz Regalia, sat in second on the leaderboard here, and the SUVs cluttering up the top 10, big tyres matter when it comes to Forza, and especially when it comes to such a high grip application, if you like, as this hill climb stage. So yeah, these rally cars with small tyres are good for general racing, and especially this one with its relatively lightweight. makes the most of its 300 horsepower very well up this stage. Now the Talbot is a little bit more lively perhaps than the Legacy. You can see the back end wanting to move around. Yeah, it does move about a bit, the Talbot. It can be here. I actually get a bit of oversteer halfway through the corner. I have to kind of go to try and correct it a smidge, and we end up in a little bit of bother. Not the greatest particular bit, but it is still travelling at a decent rate of speed up here. There's perhaps a little less understeer with this car. There is a little bit more oversteer, but again, the all-wheel drive is enough to counter that, shall we say. On the most part, you can still get things wrong if you're not careful with the car. There's another one on rally tyres. If I run across the gravel, it's not going to cost us anything in this. With one more corner to go, we throw the Talbot into this one, and it is that acceleration race towards the line. Now, let's not forget, this is on rally tyres. This does not have the optimum tyres by a long way for this stage. It did a 125.3. That's a very, very respectable time. That's a very respectable time, full stop, for a car up here, as the Talbot would go into 7th place. It would beat... Actually, sorry, it will go into 8th place. It will beat the 911 Turbo. It will beat the Quattro. It'll beat the Cayenne. It just loses out to the F-Pace, the Evo 6, the Polaris. I mean, and we're not talking by very much either. And, of course, all of the Polaris, I think, was on off-road tyres, but that's kind of a bit of a funny one, and that's also crazy, crazy light. But, you know, being that close to the Evo 6... that's an impressive showing for the Sunbeam. Now, up next we move on to something a little bit different. Not one of my vehicles that I've tended to race, however, a much requested vehicle that I built. Never quite won the vote, but it's a curiosity here. This is the Ford Transit, but it's the Forza Edition Transit, which means it is all-wheel drive from standard and mid-engined. Not exactly a normal sort of Transit. Power-wise, well... I couldn't swap the engine. I don't think I could swap the engine out and keep it in A-class. Not that I was particularly planning on, but yeah, you can't. I don't think you can swap the engine out and keep it in A-class. 324 horsepower, 500 torque. It is £3,000, which in this series is a lot. I know for a van, that's not actually all that bad, but in this hill climb series, £3,000 is quite a lot. Hell, the fastest cars have been half the weight of this. You know, apart from the Regalia. I guess that's a little bit of an outlier. That was a bit crazy, so I don't talk about that mostly. Anyway, yes, the Transit. We got this one running. Now, the Forza Edition Transit is well known for its just absurd levels of grip. I'm not quite sure. Some magic has gone into this. Some witchcraft has gone into making the Transit turn, because it is so grippy. You can carry, I mean, you're pretty much flat out into this corner, which nothing, you can see like the mid-corner speed there is incredible. That's almost, what is it, 8 miles an hour faster than we saw from the Sunbeam. It's incredible speed through there. The problem that the Transit has is, yes, it has got that grip, but we are struggling a bit with power. We struggle with power, we struggle with acceleration in the Transit. It just cannot quite get up the hills. You saw going over to that crest, we were a good few miles an hour down on some of those, almost 10 miles an hour down on some cars, some quick cars that we've seen over that part. It just lacks that little bit of acceleration. It's got the grip. It really has the grip. It might actually be one of the grippiest vehicles I've driven up here. Certainly I've needed to do the least amount of braking with this, but that's also a kind of consequence of the lack of straight line speed. You know, we're a few miles an hour slower to a corner, and we have phenomenal grip because the Transit's magic. We come across the line, still a fast time, a 26.139 for the Transit. For a van, that is stupidly fast. It's actually quicker than the Legacy up here. Yes, it is on race tyres and everything, but it's a van. So yeah, we beat the Legacy, we beat the Esprit MX-5 and so on. Still losing out to that M1, the Renault 5, the Exige, and the Commodore. It's a pretty good time for a Transit. If that had a bit more oomph about it, I think that's going to be the best way to phrase it. That would be, I'm going to say, unbeatable. There's so much grip in that Transit. You just don't expect it. So there we go. Now, another Forza Edition car that people wanted to have a go up here, and one I am curious about, is the Renault Clio RS. This is filthy fast in A-Class. We generally don't allow it to run in any of our races because it is... if we did, everyone would bring one. If the category allowed it, everyone would bring one because they are unbelievably fast. It's another Forza Edition car with huge amounts of grip. Yes, it's still front-wheel drive. I think it's still got its standard engine. 270-odd horsepower, 200 torque, 2,300 pounds. You know, statistic-wise, it's good. Doesn't look like anything crazy special. But yeah, if you've driven the Forza Edition Clio, you will know how or driven against them even, how stupendously good they are. Now, this is just the straight-up Forza Edition Clio. While the Transit I modified a bit to get it to the top of A-Class, the Forza Edition Clio comes at the top of A-Class. It's 799. Now, that does mean it doesn't actually have any aero. I didn't check to see if you could get aero on the car. I wanted to run it as it is. Potentially you could and get it even a little bit faster going up here, but this is just with the car straight up as a Forza Edition vehicle. And as you can see, yes, it's front wheel drive. No, it doesn't care one bit about being front wheel drive. You can be flat out of these corners and there is grip. There is grip and there is not really much in terms of wheel spin. Cannot quite be flat through here. We saw the Transit, but you saw the speed the Transit was carrying through that corner. We cannot quite be flat through there with the Clio, but it will carry a lot of speed. It will accelerate better than the Transit when we get out the other side. It's remarkably good. Again, it's another one with a little bit of the witchcraft going on to somehow make this work. Yeah, I like driving front-wheel drive cars. I like racing front-wheel drive cars. I've built a few half-decent ones from time to time. Nothing drives as well as this. Nothing quite drives as well as this, turns as well as this, and makes as little fuss about being fast and front-wheel drive as this one does. You can be so aggressive with the throttle that you just don't expect to get away with. I mean, we're talking tiny little taps on the brakes around some of these hairpins. Again, not quite as much grip as the Transit, but faster overall. As we come up across the line, we're starting to get seriously quick. That is a 124.4 from the Forza Edition Clio. As I said, that is just as the car comes from the game, and that's third fastest up here. It obliterates the front-wheel drive record on the course. It's quicker than the Lancia Delta. Only the Regalia, with its massively wide and somehow fast all-wheel driveness, and the Lotus 340R that was insanely light, are quicker than the Clio RS. It's only a tenth faster than the Delta and the Skyline, and so on, but yeah, that's a serious bit of kit going on there. To be fair, that 0.8 of a second is probably lost off the line compared to the Regalia and the Lotus. Now, our next vehicle we move on to is a Holden Torana. Now, some of you may well recognise this car. The very, very first video I did on the hill climb, we did a little hill climb tournament, a knockout-style tournament. I built a Torana for it. We ran the tournament in A-Class as well. There were two Toranas running. Me and someone else had built one. Both Toranas made it to the final. It was a very, very close final between them. In the end, I lost the final, but you know, either one of us could have taken victory. We had some seriously fast vehicles. It was the fastest in the field at the time. So, how would this Torana fare when being run on this actual time trial? Power-wise, 350 horsepower, 400 torque. The interesting thing is it's light. 2,100 pounds. It's lighter than the Clio. It's lighter than the Forza Edition Clio that ran up here. It's rear-wheel drive. It has some big tyres on it. I say big tyres on it. Bigger tyres than we've been running mostly today. I think they're 285s or 295s on the rear. And it has a remarkable amount of traction with the race tyres on it. The Torana is a generally good A-Class vehicle. It's a general, I'd say a general quite easy go-to A-Class vehicle. Because it can become so very light with decent sized tyres, that generally makes it a fast option. And certainly it is good up this hill climb stage. It doesn't quite have the same grip of some of the cars. You see, you have to be a little bit more careful. Back end does still want to step out. Acceleration is pretty good once, funnily enough, when you have this much power in a relatively light car. You can get going. No, it's not quite as light as the 340R and so on, but for what it is and for the size tyres it gets, it is, yeah, impressively powerful. I'd say I've forgotten how good the Torana was to drive. It was a very, very good choice of car when we came to running the hill climb tournament a little while ago, and sure enough, it was proving to be pretty rapid on its ascent this time round as well. There was, you know, little moments of oversteer. You had to be a little careful with the throttle. You couldn't just dump on the loud pedal as you got out of these corners and go for it. As again, there's some more moving around as it runs up across the line. It's into the 25s, which for a rear-wheel drive car up this course is, you know, good going. A 125.9 for the Torana. In fact, with the Torana, I think all three runs were done within 0.3 of a second of each other. I did 2 runs of the Torana in exactly the same time as well. So, yeah, it's a damn fast vehicle. It goes into a joint 14th place. It's the same speed as the 32 Ford Roadster. I mean, it's up there as one of the fastest rear-wheel drive cars. The 32.4 draws with it. A couple of the 911s are slightly faster, but we talk about only half a second quicker. So it turns out my choice to build a Tirana was pretty damn good, because I think we were running rear-wheel drive cars when we did the tournament. So yeah, for rear-wheel drive cars, that Tirana is an absolute beast. Into the 25s, it is an absolute beast. The final vehicle that I wanted to have a go with is the CRX Mugen. Again, one of my go-to cars, normally in B-Class. This is another filthy fast vehicle in B-Class. However, it does have a good track record with the hill climbs. We've done a few hill climb tournaments on streams through various times, and one of these, I can't actually remember if you got it to a victory or whether it was certainly got into the final. It certainly got into the final when built to A-Class. I know how fast these cars can be, and I was very, very curious to see what it would do when built to the set of regulations. So both this and the Tirana are built to the actual proper hill climb regulations. If you like, no drivetrain swaps, no engine swaps. They are all running race tyres. For this little CRX, 232 horsepower and 178 torque. It's not massively big numbers. However, it's very light. 1,550 pounds. This is half the weight of that Transit that went up here. And the magic with the CRX is, for some reason, normally these small light cars get to about 100 miles an hour and they just sort of stop accelerating. The CRX just never really stops going. It's surprisingly fast for relatively little power. And now, top speed, less important up this course, and one of the CRX's downsides for this particular run is tyres. The other, if we ignore the Clio for a minute, because that's a bit silly, the Civic RS was the fastest front-wheel drive car, and that got a wide body kit. They got about 275s, I think, in terms of front tyres, which is fantastic when the front tyres got to put power down and do cornering. This is on 225s, I believe, or something along those lines. It's got tiny front tyres, and you do notice it through a lot of these corners. I say through a lot of them, but certainly some of the slower speed on power corners, you do notice that the CRX does not have particularly large tyres. You do get a fair bit of understeer. You get a fair bit of kind of wheel spin as you go to set away if you aren't a bit careful. It's mighty fast, I've got to say. It is incredibly fast. It's getting to some really impressive speeds for an A-Class car up here. Again, A-Class car for a front-wheel drive car is doing some really, really remarkable things as we head up towards the final corner. And it is, as you would expect, a very nice vehicle to drive if you give it a bit of respect with its front-wheel drive power delivery across the line. And it was going to be a pretty damn fast time, 126.0 for the CRX. It is, I mean, of course, I would love for it to have gone faster, but for a front-wheel drive, for a normal front-wheel drive car, a 26.0, that beats the M1, it beats the Transit, it beats the Legacy. It does also make for a new record for a front-wheel drive car, again, barring the Clio. It beats the Civic RS by 0.4 of a second, which is not bad going at all, considering that Civic RS, we also know, is a bloody fast front-wheel drive car and has those huge tyres. So, yeah, turns out the Tirana that won a hill climb stage and the CRX Mugen has been incredibly impressive in the hill climb. Both of them, when I build them and run them in this time trial, well, very, very good. It turns out they're pretty good. It's going to be interesting to see. That's the whole point of kind of doing these slightly special episodes at the end, or towards the end of a series, to see how some vehicles pan out. Yes, my overall rally cars are going to be quick. I know they're good A-Class cars. I'm kind of surprised the difference between the Talbot and the Legacy, considering the Legacy is the one I would choose to race in under normal circumstances, but in this, the lightweight Talbot is actually very, very good. The Clio is insane. That car is disgustingly fast for just about everything. Can't beat the 340R quite, but that's crazy, crazy quick. And yeah, it turns out previous, fast contenders in hill climb stuff, funnily enough in this series, also are pretty damn fast. So, there we go. That is going to be it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, a goodbye.